Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. It's fight week. It's fight week for the WBA featherweight champion, Nick Ball, who will be facing TJ Doheny in front of a hometown crowd with big unification bouts on the horizon. Will Ball win in emphatic style this weekend? He should. TJ Doheny is up there in age. He's been around the block. He's a former champion, but currently he's coming off a loss. A knockout loss to Naoya Inoue at 122. This bout is taking place at 126. Beyond this weekend's fight, he's eyeing unification matches, one in particular against WBC champion Stephen Fulton. Nick Ball says they're the fights I want to be in, the ones who've got the belts. That WBC belt really should be mine. I'll be looking to take it back. He wasn't able to pry it away from Ray Vargas. Maybe he'll have better luck against Stephen Fulton, though first, he must settle affairs with TJ Doheny, who was able to bide his time in the Inoue fight that he just had, the fight that he just lost, by moving and looking to set traps, set up counters. Eventually, Inoue was able to get to him, though 7 rounds would pass before that contest ended, so maybe if Nick Ball can make even shorter work of TJ Doheny than Inoue did, that would be impressive. That would be a nice feather in his cap and allow him to move on to something bigger and something better. Stephen Fulton fight, maybe. I feel like this is going to be a difficult fight to negotiate because even though Stephen Fulton has traveled abroad before and fought abroad before, it didn't go his way. It didn't work out in Japan. Thus, I don't think he's in a hurry to travel abroad again and fight abroad again against Nick Ball in Nick Ball's neck of the woods. You're going to have to pay to play for that one because I don't think he's going to do it on the cheap. I'd say that Nick Ball is the A-side. Oh, you think everybody's the A-side over American fighters? No, I think headliners who headline their own main events are the A-side over undercard fighters, and that's what Stephen Fulton still is. Is Stephen Fulton headlining his own shows in Philly the way that Nick Ball is headlining his own shows in Liverpool? No. Then that would make Nick Ball the A-side over Stephen Fulton, who was and still is an undercard fighter. But I don't think that Nick Ball is drawing so much in Liverpool that he can lure Stephen Fulton to the UK. This is not a fight that I think Frank Warren can put together on his own. I think this would require some assistance from Turkey LL Sheik, who's used Nick Ball on his shows at least 2 times now. Maybe he'll use him again for a unification. He still plans on doing a big show in Alcatraz. What I think would be an easier fight to negotiate would be a Nick Ball versus Angelo Leo fight. Angelo Leo, this division's IBF champion, who's supposed to be defending his title abroad in Japan very soon. What's supposed to make that fight easier to negotiate than this one? I don't think Angelo Leo drives as hard a bargain as Stephen Fulton, unless we forget his next fight is all the way out there in Japan. If he were a bigger part of either Top Rank's bottom line or Pro Box's bottom line, then they would have had him had that fight here. As it stands, they're outsourcing him over there. Thus, I feel he might be easier to lure to the United Kingdom for a unification match than Stephen Fulton. Though, of course, he has to make it through his next fight, and we haven't crossed that bridge yet. Stephen Fulton, however, he's available, not otherwise preoccupied. I don't think the PBC is going to be doing that many shows this year, so I don't expect they're going to get him back out in a timely fashion. Fighting Nick Ball is an opportunity, but there are risks. You've fought abroad before. You've lost abroad. before.
Nick Ball's no Naoyainoe, though.
This is a 50-50 fight to me. I'm not going to underestimate Stephen Fulton the way I did in his last fight with Brandon Figueroa, their second meeting. I picked Stephen Fulton to win the first one, and I picked Brandon to win the second. As it stands, Stephen won them both, where I thought he was finished, and a shell of his former self, he still had enough to beat Brandon again.
The thing is, Brandon sucks.
Brandon Figueroa, like Nick Ball, is a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, though not a very good one. I would argue that Nick Ball is better with that style than Brandon is.
Brandon sucks.
Context is key. Stephen Fulton may have become a two-weight world champion in his last fight, but it was by beating a guy that he already beat who isn't very good. And the only reason I thought he might lose was because he looked bad the fight before that. Nick Ball is better with that base style than Brandon Figueroa is, and I think he makes for a tougher test. It also matters where the fight takes place, that if it were to happen in Liverpool, that greatly increases Nick's chances of victory.
Leaves a lot to the imagination. Let's get through this weekend's fight and see what happens afterwards.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, this week in the land down under, Keith Thurman is supposed to be taking on Brock Jarvis, which we've talked about a good number of times. And where I thought that Amazon would be picking up the card, apparently not. Amazon ain't showing this thing.
They are not a U.S. broadcast partner for this show. It's not part of their regular schedule. And one is left to wonder, what is the state of affairs between PBC and Amazon if Amazon doesn't bother to pick up this show?
What's going to end up happening is the card will be shown on PBC's YouTube channel, and it's not going to be a live feed. It's going to be a delayed feed.
It's going to be a replay.
Starts at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific.
For those interested.
Boxing Insider Rick Lacier, reacting to this news, said, "Unbelievable. PBC can't even get Keith Thurman's fight on Amazon Prime, their own distributor, probably because PBC doesn't want to pay for the live satellite link. Instead, it's on replay on YouTube. You can't make this shit up. PBC has now entered a new low, even for them."
None of which is encouraging. None of which is good for the future of PBC on the Amazon platform that has yet to make a hearty investment, a heartfelt investment in what they provide.
So you have to understand that this card that Keith Thurman is fighting on, most of the legwork is already done, and it wasn't actually done by the PBC, it was done by No Limit, the bulk of the work.
The featurettes, promoting the show, the press conferences, the undercard fighters.
It's No Limit at the helm of the promotion, not the PBC. All PBC has to do is relay the signal to their American viewers. Not dissimilar from what we saw in Janibek Alimkhanalai's last fight with Andre Mikhailiovic that took place in Australia. Top Rank was not at the helm of that promotion, but they did provide their viewers the link via their broadcast partner, and they're going to do it again with Janibek's next fight, whereas the PBC...
Yeah, Janibek's next fight is going to be shown on ESPN.
Whereas Keith Thurman's next fight is not going to be shown on Amazon. So that tells you everything you need to know. But of course, you should already know that 3 years removed from the sport, having his next fight in Australia against a little-known Australian, little-known to Americans, the PBC is not going to be that invested in today's Keith Thurman, who is all but a quasi-retired fighter attempting to resurrect his career on foreign shores.
Not dissimilar from what TJ Doheny did in Japan for 2 or 3 fights. Keith is attempting to do that in Australia. It's actually not a bad idea. It's just that the PBC and Amazon really aren't behind it.
Not fiscally, not financially, and why would they be? Amazon is not invested in the PBC, like I've been telling you, and the PBC is no longer invested in the career of Keith Thurman,
whose next 2 fights may be in Australia. If he makes it through this week's fight with Brock Jarvis, the goal is to put him in the ring with Tim Tszyu. He's got to beat Brock Jarvis, Tim has to beat Joey Spencer, then they can meet up with each other over the summer months. That's the plan.
And it isn't even a bad one, but I think it says a lot that the biggest opportunity Keith Thurman will have had in the last 3 years came to him by way of an Australian promotional outfit and not his own. and not the PBC. What Keith Thurman represents to a lot of people is a better time.
Better times on PBC Island, the golden era of PBC. He was there upon its inception. He was one of their flagship fighters, but that was many, many years ago, close to 10.
And now disposable. Keith Thurman is no longer a big part of the PBC's bottom line. At this point, they're just trying to keep their heads above water.
So is he, playing the heel, assuming the role of the loudmouth American in front of an Australian audience that would love to see him get his ass kicked
by one of their own. I've seen Brock Jarvis, and I don't actually know that he's the man to do it, that even though he's many years younger than Keith and fresher, he's just not that good.
He is bigger, though.
It's what makes this fight intriguing, albeit for the wrong reasons, that it's either Keith Thurman is just too old or Brock Jarvis.
He just ain't got it. Not even for a quasi-retired former champion in Keith Thurman. We'll get those answers later on this week.
As far as which is which. Men's middleweight news, the people over at Boxing Scene ask, is Benn fighting the wrong Eubank in April?
Not to get it a big purse, he isn't.
On Friday in Brighton, the seaside town where the Eubanks live, Eubank Sr. was spotted out in the wild at a local boxing event, to be exact, watching his nephew, Harlem, stop the tough Irishman, Tyrone McKenna, in 10 rounds. Eubank cut a typically competitive figure and got involved only at the end, when he could be seen calmly offering advice to Harlem in the ring. There was, on this occasion, none of the same intrusiveness that we saw when his son, Chris, was starting out, nor indeed any attempt to make it all about himself. Instead, Eubank Sr. appeared content to observe from afar, appreciating his nephew's handiwork and happy to witness a fight spared the dirt and darkness of the one involving his son and Benn. In fact, it wasn't until the dust settled on the fight between Eubank and McKenna that Eubank Sr. reminded us all of his bloodline and how his relationship with his son had distorted and soured in recent years. Asked on camera if he had been impressed by Harlem's performance, Eubank Sr. said, absolutely so, before then getting to what he really wanted to address. What I should tell you is that the weight he is now, he's like 70 kilos. That's the weight of Benn. They're walking around at the same weight. He's a 147-pounder. Conor used to be a 147-pounder. He's been spoiled. He's been misled. But this is the fight for him. When the fight falls through, which it will, I'm talking about Junior and Conor. When that falls through, Harlem is ready.
Does Chris Eubank Sr. know something that we don't know? He's forecasting that the fight is going to fall apart again.
It may not be on the same date, but that's going to be the next fight for them, I believe. Suddenly Dave Farrar, the man tasked with interviewing the Eubanks, Chris and Harlem for Channel 5, had been led in a different direction altogether. The allusion to a potential fight cancellation, an avenue too alluring not to explore.
I said it the last time, said Eubank. If you check back when the fight was made the first time, I said it was not going to happen. The day before the fight, it was pulled.
I'm saying to you that Harlem, the Gold Eubank, is the fight for Benn. It's the fight he deserves because he has been put on the back burner for years. They've destroyed the career of Benn, in my view. The only way he's going to get any dividend back is by fighting an undefeated Eubank. That's Junior's cousin, Harlem, the Gold Eubank.
You wondered at this fortune teller routine from Chris isn't him giving it away that he might have had something to do with that fight falling apart, and if this one does too, that might be him again.
His handiwork. No sooner had Harlem's uncle finished promoting and selling him, than Harlem cleared his throat and set the interview back on track. I want to give a shout out to Tyrone McKenna, he said. He's a real warhorse. I give him full credit. He's a real Irish fighter. He came and represented tonight. You've got a great career in television, Farrar said in response. I was going to take us back to tonight, and you did it for me.
The implication was that Harlem, like Farrar, had sensed that the post-fight interview had become too heavily focused on Benn, the man Harlem hopes to one day fight, and that not enough respect was being shown to Tyrone McKenna, the man Harlem had just defeated.
As a result, Harlem was at pains to postpone the Benn talk for a moment in favor of bringing up McKenna again, and in turn, shining the light back on himself. It was a pro move in every sense, yet occasionally something or someone is too big to ignore completely. I did what I said I was going to do, and next is Conor Benn, Harlem said to finish. That's the fight where I can really do some damage. He knows it, and that's why he doesn't want the fight.
No offense to Harlem, but Conor has bigger fish to fry, and that's the truth of it. For some reason, Chris Eubank Sr. doesn't want Chris to go through with this, and I think it's because he doesn't trust that Chris can handle it.
He doesn't believe in his son's boxing. That's what I think. On more than one occasion, I've heard Senior say some not so nice things about Junior's boxing.
Oh, there was a time when he used to talk him up, when he was basically the one in charge, but over the years, the relationship soured, and on more than one occasion, I've heard Senior talk down his own boy.
So when I see that he is so wildly averse to a Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank fight, it can't be because he thinks Chris is gonna win.
Think about this. Chris is naturally bigger than Conor, much more experience at middleweight than Conor has.
And overall, he is a much more experienced fighter than Conor is. Conor barely reached contender level, yet for some reason, Chris's dad doesn't want him to do this. Why?
It's a huge fight in the UK. It's for a gigantic amount of money, and all he's got to do is take on a naturally smaller fighter.
Yet Senior doesn't want Junior to do this, forecasting disaster, saying that this fight is going to fall apart just like the first time. You wonder that he didn't have a hand in that.
You can't help but wonder.
I've heard Senior say that the middleweight limit is not a healthy weight for Chris, yet that's where he's been for the majority of his career. And he didn't say this when Chris was going to fight Liam Williams at middleweight. He didn't say this when he was going to fight Camille Zeramata at middleweight. He only ever says this when it comes to Conor Benn.
It's giving it away. I think it's giving it away that Senior don't think Junior can beat Conor.
The untimely passing of Senior's other son, Seb Eubank, will have taken a heavy toll on his mental faculties, his mental health, to where now he seems overprotective of Junior, and he's forced to be honest about how good he is or how good he isn't, that he's not a world-class fighter.
Senior don't believe in Junior's boxing.
It's a full 180, because he used to. He used to talk him up. I think he once said that he's going to be better than Floyd Mayweather or better than Andre Ward. Do you guys remember? Where now?
He doesn't believe in him or of his boxing. He wants to protect him.
Especially when there's a rehydration clause involved in this fight to even the scales, even the playing field, because Conor is a smaller fighter who's moving up the middle all the way from down there at welter.
They stuck a rehydration clause on Chris, but he accepted it. He's a grown man. He's 35 years old.
Though I don't expect Senior to like it, yet another reason he may be so averse to this fight, not allowed to rehydrate as soon or as much as he wants to, when he wants to. That can affect his punch resistance, make him easier to hurt, easier to knock out.
And Senior is of the opinion that this fight is going to fall apart again. If it does, did he have a hand in it?
And did he have anything to do with the first fight falling apart? The mind starts to wander. It's not outside the realm of possibility that a parent, especially a mentally unstable one, would go to extreme lengths to protect their child, to keep them out of harm's way.
Mind starts to wander.